The NFL free agency period is over with. We got the NFL draft over with, and now we are at the point of the NFL offseason where there is a lot of nothing going on. And yeah, it's going to be a very, very dry few months. Well, I'm going to try to produce as much content as possible, but bear with me, okay? In this video, we're going to be talking about the remaining free agent. Now, there is quite a few players that are really good out there. You know, of course, the reason why they're out there is because A, injury history, and B, their age. But again, you know, these are players that have proven that they're really good in the NFL, and they're just out there because of those two reasons. But I'm going to give my predictions real quick. I'm going to give a quick synopsis real quick of these players. And yeah, let's get into it. And now, before I start, I just want to do a top 10 free agents available. You know, of course, these players you might not agree with, but you maybe forgot about. There's a couple of these players are in the video that are June 1st or post June 1st designation. So technically, they're not a free agent yet. But like I said, these are the top 10 players in my opinion. But the very first player we're going to be talking about is Hunter Renfrow from the Las Vegas Raiders. He played with the Raiders since 2019. You can see the stats. His best year was definitely in 2021. We had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. But basically, ever since 2022, he had a couple injuries, and basically ever since then, he was not up to expectations. In 2023, he actually played every game, but he just was not productive at all. He only put up 200 and 300 yards or something like that, and the Raiders ended up releasing him in 2023 offseason, well, this offseason, of course, to save $8.3 million in cap. And yeah, that's basically the only reason why to save cap. And now these are my personal predictions. I think most of these players will get signed, by the way. I do want to say that before. But again, I think they're best fit. So yeah, I kind of want to get that little quick recap out there. But like I said, Hunter Renfrow, I do think he should go to the Cincinnati Bengals. And of course, you got, you know, you're thinking, oh, they already got Jamar Chase, they got T. Higgins. And yeah, they do. And they ended up drafting the wide receiver Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round. But, you know, maybe we don't know exactly what's going on with T. Higgins yet. And, you know, Hunter Renfrow can be productive if he's fully healthy. And I think that the Bengals should sign him to a 1-year contract, like, you know, $3 to $4 million. Of course, he's still sitting out there, so you probably will take anything. But, you know, like I said, the Bengals have good weapons already, but he could be a solid number 3 player. And I think that maybe if T. Higgins ends up leaving, he might be a number 2. Who knows? But I think the Bengals are possibly good for him. The next player we're going to be talking about is a 31-year-old Michael Thomas, formerly with the New Orleans Saints. And dude, he was a complete baller, let me tell you that. From the period of 2016 all the way up until 2020, or maybe even 2019, he was a complete baller, getting 1,000 yards every year, multiple touchdowns. He was just one of the most reliable wide receivers in the NFL. But ever since 2020, he was just decimated with the same injuries, basically his knees, his hamstrings, and all in the same leg, by the way, too. But ever since 2020, he's been just completely decimated with injuries, and it's just really unfortunate for him because he was by far the best wide receiver in NFL, like I just said. And it just sucks because, you know, again, he was so dominant, but then injuries, bam, 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 just ruined another career. The Saints will be releasing him in June 1st, well, the post-June 1st release, and I don't know the exact numbers. I couldn't really find it, but I will say that, you know, I think he still can be a really productive player, of course, if he can stay healthy. My personal prediction, I think that the Steelers should probably pick him up. Now you're maybe thinking, well, they already got George Pickens and they just drafted Roman Wilson, but basically when it comes to wide receivers, that's really it. They got a lot of fast guys, so I will give them that. But they need a really dominant red zone threat, and I think that Michael Thomas, again, these signings, they should sign like a 1-year deal, super cheap. So I think that the Steelers should honestly do it. I think it's a really good fit. And like I said, he could be an automatic number 2. You know, of course, their whole Steelers wide receiver room is really fast. And I think that, of course, Michael Thomas isn't fast anymore, but still could be a really good threat. You never know. Sign him to a super cheap 1-year deal. And I think that the Steelers could really benefit from this. The last player we're going to be talking about, well, the last wide receiver we're going to be talking about in this video is Marquez ValdesScanley, also known as MVS, and yeah, we all know how he is. He's only 29 years old, so he's still relatively young, but, you know, looking at his stats, he played with the Packers from 2018 to 2021 and had somewhat decent years, and, you know, the last couple of years he was on against Kansas City Chiefs, and yeah, you know, ever since he was on the Chiefs, he's been he really hasn't had an injury history. He had a couple of injuries in 2021 and 2020 with the Packers, but they're basically very mild hamstring issues. But ever since 2021, he's been pretty healthy, so that's not a concern for him. The only really concern from him is the drops. He had a lot of drops last year, of course, only putting up 315 yards in 16 games. And yeah, that's not that too good. In my personal opinion, I think he should go to the Denver Broncos. Now, granted, their wide receiver room is not too good. Of course, they got Courtland Sutton and they just drafted Troy Franklin. But other than that, they have a lot of okay players. There are a lot of young players. I will say that. A lot of young players. But they need another fast receiver and give Bo Nix as much help as possible, or Zach Wilson, either one. I don't know who's going to be starting. I think it's going to be Bo Nix, though. But again, go to your division rival or your former team's division rival, and they need help. And now, granted, the Broncos' money situation is but again, all these players I'm going to be talking about today are probably going to be signing super cheap contracts because they're still in the free agents for a particular reason. So yeah, Marquez ValdesScanley going to the Denver Broncos. Jamal Adams is the next player we're going to be talking about, and he's only 28 years old. So he's probably one of the younger, really good free agents out there still. Of course, we all know that he got drafted with the Jets in 2017. He played up until 2019 and then got traded to the Seattle Seahawks. And he was a really dominant safety with the Jets. And then whenever he went to the Seattle, he played until 2022 when he basically missed the whole year with the quad injury. And again, injuries completely decimate another player. And injuries is just really sad all over. And in his last year with the Seattle Seahawks, it wasn't really that good either. So it makes sense for the Seattle Seahawks to cut him. They saved a lot of money in order to do so. So yeah, it made all sense, honestly. And it sucks that basically ever since 2022, he just has not been himself. Now, my prediction, I'm going to use the same team I just used a second ago, the Denver Broncos. And now you're thinking, well, why would they sign Jamal Adams if they just released Justin Simmons? Well, Justin Simmons is actually going to be later in my video. But again, just Justin Simmons was getting paid a lot. And now maybe they can sign Jamal Adams, a still relatively good safety out there, and they got basically no safeties at the moment. I can't even name one on top of my head if I had to be honest. But again, I keep saying that super cheap deal was like a 1 year, $4 million, $5 million, whatever it is. The NFL can afford it, or the NFL teams can afford it. And I think that the Broncos are a good fit because they got no safeties and they got somewhat kind of money now. I'm not exactly sure their cap situation, but it just makes the most sense for him to go to the Denver Broncos too. The next player we're going to be talking about is 33-year-old Micah Hyde, formerly with the Buffalo Bills. And this dude was another complete baller back in his prime. He played with the Green Bay Packers since 2013 and 2016. Then he got traded to the Buffalo Bills, and ever since he's on the Bills, he was by far the best safety in the league for many years. And of course, in 2022, he had this devastating neck injury that basically, again, I keep saying it, an injury ruined another player. And it happened with Micah Hyde. He literally missed all of 2022. In 2023, he just wasn't that good. He was a player that was not released. His contract ended up, ending, and that's the reason why he's still a free agent. In my personal prediction, I think he should go to the Atlanta Falcons. And now, of course, they got Jesse Bates out there, one of the best safeties in the class out there right now. But their other safety, their strong safety, I don't even know who he is. It's a complete nobody, again, in my personal opinion. But I will say that, again, he's older. He still has some kind of juice left in him. I think that would be a great depth piece for the Falcons. Of course, along with Jesse Bates, a really proven guy like Micah Hyde going to the Falcons. Of course, the Falcons are trying to go to the Super Bowl this year and the next year, even though they drafted freaking that quarterback in the first round. I don't know why they still did that, but they're still a really good team. So, well, supposedly a good team. And I think that this can only help them by adding Micah Hyde in free agency. One of the youngest players out there in the NFL this year, in the NFL free agency this year, is Cam Akers, a running back. And whenever he plays, he is really, really good. But again and again, injuries ruined another player. He played with the Los Angeles Rams in 2020 and 2023. And of course, his rookie year wasn't too bad, 600 yards. Then a missed 2021 with a tore ACL, so bam, missed the whole year. Came back in 22 and put up pretty good numbers. And then bam, 23, he got hurt again. He was traded from the Rams to the Vikings during the middle of the season, or if I'm not mistaken, he was like earlier in the season. I can't remember. It was during the season. That's all I remember. But basically, he played half the year in 2023. Wasn't doing too bad, but then got freaking hurt again. Torn Achilles. And now I will admit that, with two major injuries like Cam Akers has, it's a really big red flag for NFL teams to not sign him. And I technically don't blame him, but he's still really young. He still has a lot left in the tank. He's only 24 years old. But I do think that the best team for him to go to is the Cincinnati Bengals. And of course, they lost Joe Mixon, but they ended up signing Zach Moss. But when it comes to the number 2 running back, it was like some kind of rookie named Chase. I could be roasting this guy unintentionally, but I'm not trying to. But it's basically a nobody named player, and I think that they do need a decent backup running back. He's only going to be a backup for now. And again, another 1 year, $2 to $3 million deal, something super cheap. But I think that it's a really good fit for him to try to kind of rebound. He might miss most of 2024 due to his torn Achilles. I'm not exactly sure his timetable to return, but again, super cheap. Super, 1 year deal, whatever. I think the Bengals are a good fit for him. The one and only quarterback we're talking about in today's video is Ryan Tannehill, formerly with the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans, and he was a pretty good quarterback back then. Now, taking a look at the stats on the screen, he played with the Miami Dolphins for about 6 to 7 years, ended up getting traded to the Tennessee Titans in 2019, and his best year was probably in 2020, where he had 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. But, again, injuries ruined another player. He actually tore his ACL in 2017, and that's why he didn't play that entire year. And he had a couple more injuries, those small injuries in 2022 and 2023. But yeah, again, a lot of injuries for a player again. But in 2023, whenever he did play, he just wasn't good. He had a lot more interceptions than touchdowns, and that is a recipe for disaster. But his contract ended, so it's not like a cut, and he hasn't been signed since then. And now wherever he goes, he's definitely going to be a backup quarterback. And I think that the best place for him is to go to the Chicago Bears. And now, of course, they drafted Caleb Williams. I understand he's going to be the number 1 quarterback. When you look at the Bears quarterbacks, bro, they got a whole lot of nobodies. And I think that Ryan Tannehill is by far better than the other 2 players on the Bears quarterback roster. And again, just a backup, but he's a proven quarterback out there in the NFL, and I think that the Bears make the most sense. I was looking at all the other teams, and they don't really need a backup quarterback, and I think that the Bears should end up signing him. The one and only tackle we're going to be talking about is David Bakhtiari, by far the best offensive lineman in the free agency currently, and of course, I made a couple other videos, so you already know how I feel about him. He was drafted in the NFL in 2013. He played with the Packers since then, and you can see his grades are absolutely amazing. Whenever he plays, he is by far the best offensive lineman in the NFL, and it really sucks that, the last 3 to 4 years, he only played like 10 games or something like that. But like I said, he's only played like 10 to 12 games, something like that, since 2021, 2022, and he's been basically a waste of a spot for the Packers in the last 3 years. And like I said, he's a really good tackle when he's healthy, but again, it's the same knee over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It just really, really sucks. And now he's the only free agent, in my opinion, that might sign a 2-year deal here out of all my top 10, just because he still isn't officially healthy yet. He might be missing like the first 6 to 7 weeks of this season. His knee is just, he needs to replace his whole knee, honestly. But in my personal opinion, I think the Washington Commanders should sign David Bakhtiari. And it makes sense because they didn't even draft an offensive lineman. They drafted a guard in like round 4 or round 5 or something like that. But when it comes to the tackles, they still have a really banged up offensive line. And it could be really good for the young players in that locker room. The offensive lineman, he's still a really good motivator, really good teacher. He knows what the hell he's doing. But again, he might not even play most of this year upcoming. He said they might sign him like a 2-year deal. He's going to get signed somewhere. That's for damn sure. But I think that whoever does sign him is going to be a 2-year deal. And I do think that it will be with the Washington Commanders. The next player we're going to be talking about is Xavien Howard from the Miami Dolphins. Of course, he was on the Dolphins his whole career since 2016. And I will say he had a couple really good years and a couple really bad years. Taking a look at his grades on the screen, his best year was probably 2020 when he had an 87.3 grade. But again, he had a couple really good years, a couple really bad years. And I do know that he missed most of 2019 with a knee injury. So he's sort of kind of injury prone. I'm not exactly sure. He is a post June 1st designation for release, and he's technically not a free agent yet. So maybe that's why he's not signed yet, but he's still a relatively good cornerback out there. He's 30 years old, so he has maybe a couple years left in the tank, but in my opinion, I think he should go to the New York Giants. Now, when it comes to the New York Giants, they have a lot of really good, I wouldn't say good yet, but a lot of young cornerbacks. They ended up drafting one in the 3rd round, but a veteran presence, he might be their automatic #1 cornerback when he starts. I think it makes the most sense for him to go to the New York Giants. Of course, he's going to be probably the #1, a really young cornerback room. And of course, he's still in the free agency for a particular reason. Maybe because it's post June 1st. But, a team technically still can sign him. But I think it makes all the sense in the world for him to go to New York Giants. The last but not least we're going to be talking about is Justin Simmons. Like I mentioned earlier in my video, one of the best free agents out there still. He's 30 years old. He's played with the Denver Broncos his whole career, and he was by far the heart and soul of this team, and it completely shocked me that he got released. But then again, it makes sense. He missed a couple of games here and there in his career, but overall, he's actually a really good, really healthy player, and I think that's really huge for the NFL, of course, because, like I say in every freaking video, injuries kill players. But the Broncos ended up releasing him, saving $14.5 million in the cap, and of course, that's the main reason why. And he's 30 years old, so he's getting up there in age, but then again, he's still putting up really good numbers whenever he plays. And I think that he is going to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, that might be a little bit of a joke because A, it's a division rival, and B, they don't really need safeties that bad because they drafted one and they got Justin Reed still there. But it'd just be pretty funny if I had to be honest. I don't think he's going to go to the Raiders because they're probably going to be cheeks this year. Of course, the Chargers are good, but don't need safeties. And I think that he's going to try to piss off the Broncos organization so much, he's going to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I mean, he's still a good player. They do need another safety out there. Justin Reed's, like I said, he's still there, but adding him in the secondary, bro, that'd be pretty funny for the Broncos fan base. But that wraps up this video. If you do like it, hit that like button, comment down below your biggest reaction of this video. I love seeing your guys' comments, but I'm out of here. Deuces.